Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 2. Here to talk about Ad Astra per Aspera.
Well, before you go further, just a little tidbit that I had seen before that. That title is not only the title of the episode and, a specific meaning for this, but it's also the state motto of Kansas, which is where Captain Kirk is born.
No, wait, I thought he was born in Iowa.
No, wait a second. Maybe you're right.
Yeah. Or Idaho.
No, we saw it. Wait a second. Hang on. We can edit this out later.
Yeah, Iowa.
It is Iowa. Then why the hell did that? So that is completely wrong. Let me see. I was gonna say
stop using ChatGPT.
No, it was just some random thing that was on like Reddit or something like that. But I was like, and you're right. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's completely wrong. Let me see. Iowa state motto. Yeah, that's not right. Stupid thing. Well, Pike. Maybe that's right.
Where's
maybe
Pike
that's
from?
where they got it wrong. Okay, then Pike. Nope, he was born in California.
He's from the city of Mojave.
He's in California. So that guy was completely wrong. It would have been a cool little tidbit.
Yeah, he's just making shit
right?
up.
It would have been a really cool little tidbit.
Yeah, Strange New World, Season 2, Episode 2, episode title, Ad Astra per Aspera. Not the state motto of Kirk's birthplace.
Not even in the least, Nick. Sometimes you should really stop suggesting such really stupid statements, honestly.
Yeah, my bad. State motto of Captain Kirk's birthplace. Little known fact. Anyways, so in this episode, as predicted by us in our first round, this was a very Pike-centric episode in the beginning. I did not expect it to just dive right into the trial, but we get into Una's trial, put on trial because of her genetic engineering. Apparently, that's a cultural thing.
Also the Illyrians, anyway.
Illyrians, that's the name of the aliens I was looking for. Cultural practice for the Illyrians. Answered some questions as far as apparently they were on a planet that was to be inducted into the Federation, but in order to do so, they had to kind of give up their cultural heritage of genetic engineering. Some did, some didn't. The ones that didn't now have to kind of fly under the radar. So we go through the court case, effectively makes the argument for asylum, and that's why she hid it from everybody, and that's what she's requesting now, even if she didn't realize that's what she was doing. And yeah, now it's okay. It's a technicality exception. They won the court case, and yes, life should be back to normal next episode. That's pretty quick down and dirty. You think there's anything of note to highlight within that? Oh, she turned herself in. That was the big twist. Right. The first officer, number one, she went ahead, and they're like, how did someone find out about this? And it's because she turned herself in because she was, quote unquote, like sick of running, sick of hiding who she truly was.
I mean, like, we'll draw all the parallels in our next section, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, there was a couple of bit of nuances, but in essence, the episode revolved around the court case, which so many times between the, every court case episode we've seen in Star Trek before, it's the main focus of the episode. Everything else is just kind of getting us ready for that moment. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up the episode.
Yeah. With that being said, and now we expect things to kind of go back to normal next episode. What'd you think?
I mean, and if you're going to rank this as far as a Star Trek episode, I would say it was good. It was nothing new. We've seen this exact same scenario happen in one manner or another many times before, sometimes better, sometimes worse. As a court case episode, I would say it's probably somewhere in the middle. Again, it was nothing that really showed anything that we hadn't seen in the past, but it was still enjoyable. I think the twist of it was kind of okay. I think the ending of it was a little bit weak, if I were to be honest. I think, first of all, even if she wanted to be granted asylum, that doesn't mean necessarily that she should be necessarily allowed right back into Starfleet. I think what they were trying to say, at least trying to allude to, was that Starfleet should just be ashamed of what they were doing, even though they do have pretty valid reasons for not wanting genetically modified people in Starfleet. And since they're ashamed, that the court should just find any kind of excuse they can in order to allow Una back into Starfleet, and they should all just be happy about it. Like, But my biggest problem was like that shift at the very end of it. Like, while it was a really good argument made by the defense about why she should be not persecuted, it doesn't make any sense to me why, like, the judges, the counsel on the prosecuting side, or anybody should just immediately have a complete tonal change. Like, nobody spoke up and like, okay, well, she asked for asylum when she, told told Pike about her genetic modifications. So yeah, she shouldn't be prosecuted with sedition. But does that really mean that everything should be swept under the rug and she should just be brought back into Starfleet? It felt a little bit too convenient for an ending for the episode, in my opinion. I don't know. What about you?
No, I think the highlight, like the high point of the episode, was the attack on Admiral Carroll. Is that his name?
Oh, April. You mean the first commander of the Enterprise?
Carroll, Captain April.
Actually, Admiral.
Because I'm like, because it genuinely Admiral, formerly known as Captain April,
first commander of the
Admiral
Enterprise.
April. Yeah. That was the high point of the episode for me, because I was like, where are they going with this? Are they going the direction of just using this as a platform for like, you're all racist and you break the rules whenever you want, but you can't break the rules here? That was cool, I guess. And then, yeah, it kind of went down. So that was the peak, and then it kind of went downhill. I did like the arguments. I did like calling out Starfleet on its BS and tying that to, had nothing to do because it was the law. It had to do because you're prejudiced and a racist. It's like, and I think that's a fine argument to make, right? I don't have a problem with that.
The thing is that they constantly made really good points of like why genetic engineering is not supposed to be around. I mean, the thing was, I think they're making the eugenics wars feel way too recent, because, like, canonically, I think the eugenics wars happened in the 90s, if I remember correctly. So we're talking 200 years
it was like
before
the
this
1990s.
episode, the eugenics wars happened. Also, tens of millions, I feel kind of is like a lowball figure, considering that, like, it was like a war, like it was like Southeast Asia, I think, or no, North Africa, most of the Middle East, I believe, is where the war is supposed to happen. But they constantly go back and forth. I mean, like, we've seen canonical breaks. I mean, like, we had that episode when Janeway's ancestor was in the United States at the turn of the millennium, and nobody seemed to have talked about anything about that kind of stuff. I mean, spacecraft should have already existed because Khan's ship left at the end of the eugenic war into space, so they had technology going. But so canonically, like, it's all over the place with the eugenics wars. But I think overall, it felt way too like nonchalant, like they kind of just talking about like it is just kind of like a bad thing. But in reality, like, we saw like what Khan's mentality was. I mean, we basically looked at, genetically unmodified people as inferior, that should be exterminated. And while that could be argued that that was just Khan's, crazy view of humanity, and not all genetically modified people would think the same way, there's a lot of good evidence for Starfleet to believe that that's exactly what would happen. I mean, we've seen that happen time and again in human history. So
they had a saying, and it was, but superior people breed like superior ambition or something like that. And that was what they were afraid of, is just like, when you are the strongest, like, what's stopping you from just steamrolling everybody else? And humans hadn't yet shown the capacity to like curtail their behavior. Right. So I don't know what they're expecting on this. Like, it's an interesting attempt at maybe their own Drumhead-esque style court case,
I think or Measure of a Man. I think it's closer to Measure of a Man than Drumhead.
And I do think like it was fine. It was fine. I don't know if I completely bought, like you said, okay, we can wash our hands of this now. She requests asylum, so everything she lied about up until this point is just forgiven.
Right. And we see even 100 years in the future from this, like with Bashir, that it's still a issue that they haven't really started to flex on. So in reality, this court case really did nothing, because Starfleet's opinion on genetically modified people is exactly the same 100 years from now. In reality, it really didn't, like, as far as like what it did for Starfleet or the Federation, it did literally nothing. And even with Bashir, they just sweep it under the rug because they're in wartime and they need an officer that is going to be able to do what they need to do. So I don't disagree with what the defense's lawyer was talking about, in that in reality, Starfleet only follows its protocols when they're convenient, and it's not a very good look for such an supposedly evolved society.
as a court-centric episode, they did bring out the type of arguments that you should be making, because we've seen time and time again Starfleet bend the rules for whatever reason, and this would be no different. So yeah, the ending was a bit of a cop-out in that, okay, I can prove that she wants to claim asylum. Great. She still lied on her application, which is what the
trial was about.
Yeah. And it didn't, you know what they didn't address though, is because what it seemed like they were harping on the fact that she lied on her application. And what I didn't hear, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but are genetically modified people barred from serving in Starfleet?
Yes, they do mention that they are not permanently genetically modified people. I think they make a mention of specifically saying, so like if you're modified to like cure a disease, you're not like immediately banned or have to be removed from Starfleet, but you can't.
Because I thought the issue was she lied on her application, not necessarily that.
Well, that's what she's being tried
genetically
for, because
modified.
she's already in Starfleet. But if she were to have disclosed that she was genetically modified, she never would have been allowed to Starfleet in the first place. So it's not like a crime to be genetically modified, because maybe you were unaware, like you were done it as a child and then you were in there. I don't think in that case you probably would be dismissed from Starfleet if they found out, because you're not allowed to be genetically modified and serve in Starfleet. But that would just be a dismissal. Her crime was lying on her application, which is actually the exact same thing that in Drumhead, the not half Romulan, but like quarter Romulan officer was accused of. But okay, so that actually brings me to a point, something that I didn't necessarily like, and I don't think it was ever addressed. But how could Una have been serving in Starfleet for so long, and the transporter never figure out that she was genetically modified?
That's why I think they were trying to wave that away with, like, there are other Illustrians in Starfleet. Maybe they genetically indistinguishable.
Yeah, I mean, they do actually. You remember them actually saying that it's I think it's like Eric Soong, the one that actually created like this, like the Illyrian race. Like he was the one that kind of got him going, and that was the same Soong that we saw in Enterprise. And I always love a good Enterprise reference. And he was smart, so he probably could have worked something into their genetics that would have, lied to censors, not so that way people didn't figure out who they were, because he knew that they were being prosecuted. So it would make sense that he would put something in there to try to hide the fact that they were genetically engineered.
I thought that was just a cultural practice from like even in Enterprise's time. I have to rewatch that Enterprise episode, because that's the episode where they steal the warp coil when they're out in the expanse. Like those are the aliens. I'm pretty sure like those are the aliens that he like at first go to help him after that big battle, and Enterprise is like shot to shit.
What does that have to do with Soong?
It doesn't. That's what I'm saying. Like I thought that they were already. I don't think that has anything to do with.
Oh, okay.
That's why I was wondering where you got that, because I thought that they had always done genetic. Like even in Enterprise, it was mentioned, but I'd have to go back and look at the episode.
They do mention in the episode that it's Soong who genetically modified at least some of the Illyrians. I don't know if he got it started, but I mean, you also got to remember that even Enterprise takes place close to 100 years before this. Maybe not 100, maybe about 50 or 75. So it would have been plenty of time for that culture to get on its feet. But yeah, I don't know.
I have to look. I'm not going to say anything until I watch the episode, but I was pretty sure that I came into that thinking that they had always, like, it wasn't Assumed who brought them genetic engineering. They had just always done genetic engineering.
Maybe I misheard,
and I don't remember
they said.
And I don't remember his name. The only time I don't even think I heard Soong mentioned. The only time I heard anything mentioned about,
I think it was back in the first season when Una first got outed.
Oh, got it.
But I know I remember hearing it, because I remember like, oh shit, that's the same Soong from Enterprise. That's awesome. But
no, interesting. Yeah. Okay. What I was tackling with in this episode was the seeming. I don't know if I felt this way. So this is what's so hard is like, I want to say forced parallels to like, because it's obvious they're trying to use genetic engineering as like a, what do they call that? Like a
lens
in place of a current.
It's a lens
into
for
a
like
current,
our own current issues.
Yeah, and so genetic engineering is, I don't know, the trans community,
Right. It's
right?
gay rights, trans
And
rights, almost, or,
yeah,
it can be viewed between anything civil rights back in the 60s. It's another lens for something that we've had to deal with as a culture many, many times.
and so I don't know if they hit the mark on that though. Like I don't know if it's like, can you use the same arguments that you would use in like a trans
And
case in something like this where it's a genetically modified? Because that's for the genetic engineering element was for like enhancement, right?
But you're right. Like
I just
it's false
I don't know
equivalency,
if
but
you
it's
can.
still discrimination, in one way or another. And I think that's what they're
Yeah,
trying to show is that discrimination comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Sometimes discrimination is just done because people look different or love differently.
but I like the argument. Like if it was a trans case, I like the arguments, right? Because it's like, oh, we bend the rules for everybody all the time.
Right.
But in this case, we can't. And it's this long-standing like, and you don't necessarily have to be consciously. You don't have to be outwardly like, I unapprove of
Right.
this way or this lifestyle or this individual to be a bigot,
Sure. Like
right? To still
you could
make
be
bigoted
making
decisions.
cultural or like you could be making judgment
Yeah,
decisions with a underlying bias that you don't realize you even have.
right. And so that's what I liked about what they were calling attention to, especially with Captain April or Admiral
Gotcha.
April.
Right.
April,
Ah,
yeah, that's Admiral April to you. That in itself shows, right? Because he's obviously a pretty tempered guy, and it's like, oh, so you follow the law. Okay, so you're going to hide behind the law now. Well, let's explore that for a moment. And how many times did you circumvent the law because it fit your purposes, right? And I think that that's a very valid thing to point out because it's like a lot of people do hide behind the law.
So anything else that we didn't talk about that was the one scene in the not 10 forward, whatever the hell they call 10 forward on the Enterprise A. Is it the Enterprise A or is it just the original? No, it's just the original. Where Spock is talking to the other Vulcan, like the defense one, and they're like just talking to each other and what's his name? Topanga?
I was going to say Topanga, like the love interest of Boy Meets
Oh,
World.
it's not Topanga. It's something similar to that though. I think I have it written down here somewhere. Yeah, I thought that was probably like the only one of the episodes that I like literally like belly laughed. That was actually pretty funny. I do think that they're actually hitting a good stride with Spock's mannerisms so far. I think that like they're getting his humor properly. Yeah, I actually really like the way that they're like probably this is the best Spock since actuals.
I liked their attention to detail with or paying attention to the fact where it's like, okay, you're going to put Spock on the stand. They're going to ask him questions about logic. How are you going to logic his way out of this? And I liked that the direction that they went was like, well, it would be illogical to remove her and therefore harm Starfleet in the process. I'm like, yeah, I guess that's a good way to write yourself out of the logic argument. Because realistically, like, they could have just went, well, isn't it illogical to like break the law? But they didn't go that route. Right. And really like drill into them. It was just kind of a going around the room. But it does because it opens up another plot hole. It's like, okay, so then who, like, let's say in Una's case, she had no say in when she was genetically modified, and they called that out in the episode of like, she didn't have a choice. Right. She was born this way. And that I did like that. And I thought they were going to go somewhere with that, but instead it was just like, they didn't draw a line. It was just like, oh no, if you're genetically modified, you're like, yeah, but it'd be one thing if you went to like a genetic scientist and said like, hey, I want stronger pecs.
But again, she was on trial.
A smarter mind.
She was on trial for lying on her application. I mean, if she was found out to be genetically modified, she would have probably been dismissed from Starfleet, but she's no charges have been brought against her. She's on trial because she lied on her application. She knew what she was when she joined Starfleet. So I would say that overall, I agree that I would probably give this episode higher than last one. I think I gave the last episode like a 6 out of 10. I'd probably give this one a solid like 7 out of 10. I think it was engaging. I didn't feel bored watching it. I watched this episode twice, like once just to get the feel of it and the second time to get more details in it. And even during the second time, I was still fully engaged in watching the episode. I didn't feel like it was a chore. So I would say that it was a good courtroom drama. It did have some slight problems as far as its logic and like what it came through. But I would say overall, it was a good addition. It helped us. But at the end of the day, it literally is now back to square zero. So this could have never happened and it never would have affected the story at all. But I think it was a good message, at least just like our complaint from last episode that there really wasn't an overlaying like message. This one did have one. So that's why I think I would give it a little bit higher.
I agree. So would you give it 7 out of 10? Yeah. If I can do points, point. I agree with everything you said. I think it was a lot more enjoyable than the last episode. I think it had an actual message, which is a plus. While it did open up some holes, at least towards the end, it did have some good high points, and it flowed, and I was interested and engaged to see out through the rest of the episode, which can't say the same for every episode of new Star Trek. So I think a 6.5, 7-ish out of 10 is pretty good. As far as courtroom, like the best of the Next Generation or something, I still put it on the bottom.
Well, I think I would put it above.
And
there was one with Dax, I remember, from DS9 that was pretty weak.
was that the like relationship one?
Yeah.
Where you're not allowed to.
I think that's what it was. I remember there was.
You're not allowed to continue a relationship from.
I remember like barely paying attention to that one. It doesn't beat anything in TNG. It didn't beat. But wasn't there one in Voyager or something similar? I can't remember now.
It was. Well, there was one for.
I would even put it above the episode where Archer.
I think it was the Doctor. I think there was one of our. There was an episode around like, is the Doctor a real person?
Right. Talking about Star Wars again. Oh, look,
talking about that. They're
talking about them Star Wars. Them
Star Wars.
Yeah, brother.
But yeah, I would say I like the episode of Enterprise where Archer got put on trial above this one too. Even though that really I wouldn't consider like a courtroom drama episode. It was just there was a courtroom. Oh, another great one.
Isn't that like a recap episode?
That was way better than this one. Where Chief Transporter Officer O'Brien was put on trial.
Miles O'Brien?
Giles O'Brien, yes. No, the episode where he was put on trial. Well, actually, he was put on trial twice. Wasn't he put on trial once by the Cardassians, which was great, and then the other one where he was put into the mind prison for like 50 years. Both I would consider courtroom things in some regard. And both episodes are better.
There was one where maybe was it Voyager where someone killed someone's lover? Wasn't that, or was that Riker? I don't know. Anyways. Where they have to like prove his innocence, even though the memories show him like killing.
That was when Riker went on the drilling platform thing, the energy drilling thing, and they went through like every single like point of view, like his point of view, the wife's point of view, and then the scientist's point of view, and then kind of like put it together. Great episode. And a court drama on 100%, and way better than this episode.
That's it.
That wraps up Season 2, Episode 2 of Strange New Worlds. See what Episode 3 does. Hopefully it'll just be a...
That's how I close it. Well, we're done.
We're done.